All right, any questions before we kick off the fourth project? All right. So, who are you supposed to be in the context of this project? What role?
Software developer.
Yep, software developer. In fact, I think, aren't you newly hired? You don't yet have that pessimism that everyone acquires after you're ground down by life. For what kind of company? Yes. Who are the people within the company that you'll be doing some work for? I heard Tom. And these are game designers, is that correct? All right. So this is what I need you to do. Let me step out of role for a minute and talk about here as an instructor is that we're essentially from this point forward in the semester we're looking at object-oriented programming, and there's certainly technical syntactic aspects to that class, just as you have loops and variables and so forth. There are technical things that are relevant to object-oriented programming, but what normally gets short shrift that I want to ensure that you get a taste of is what it means to approach a problem from an object-oriented perspective, as opposed to approaching a problem from a functional decomposition perspective. So to simulate that more, that's why the materials are kind of, for lack of a better term, authentic. The problem is no doubt simplified so that we in an introductory programming class can ultimately solve the problem. But I tried to give you a taste of a little bit of ambiguity, not being entirely sure what to do, and so that you can really get a feel for what it means to approach it from that perspective. Now I could have just given you, and I think I've mentioned this a little bit in a previous class, is I could easily give you just a paragraph that says, okay, you're going to write a program that does this and has these functions and blah, 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 blah. Well, if I do that, and when instructors do that for you, what they're doing is they're doing all the hard problem solving for you, right? And they just want you to write the code. I want you to actually go through this process of approaching this problem and solving it the way an object-oriented developer would solve it. All right, so this question here, what would you tell a programmer that need a programmer, what? I'm just making up sentences here. So maybe a perspective you could take is, let's say next semester's 111 students are in here, and I bring you all in, and I say, okay, tell them what needs to be done. All right? Yeah, it's an open-ended question to be sure, but I would like you to tackle this question. And we'll spend the bulk of the period answering that question with me kind of leading the discussion, but I'd like to start out with you talking with each other about what that is. So again, I think a good perspective is students next semester. What are you going to tell them? What is that paragraph you're going to give them that tells them what exactly they need to do to code up this project? So I'm going to stop the recording, and not long, maybe 10 at the outside, 15 minutes I'll give you to team up with whoever, I don't care, and try and answer that question so that when I bring it back up here and start asking, then you all can give me some feedback on the kinds of stuff that you came up with. Okay? All right, on your mark, set, go. What is it that you have to do? Give me the big picture. You have to do what? Jousting game. Do you have to create a production-ready jousting game that is shrink-wrapped and put on store shelves, at least if you lived in the 1990s? Nowadays, you just download it. Do you have to create a finished product? No. What do you have to do? Okay. Write some code for testing a jousting game. Okay. So the game designers are the ones who are giving you direction on this. What is it that they want? Why are they having you do this? Why are they having you create a test program? What's their motivation? Okay, want to test tell me, drill down a little bit on everything. What exactly are they kind of wanting to test? Okay. So let me say to test everything, to experiment with different values for attributes in the game to ensure it flows well. All right. So tell me a bit about the game. What happens in the game? Who gets to pick different weapons? Give me the bigger picture. Is it a dogfight, World War II flying ace game? The night game. Tell me, what are these knights doing? All right. How many of them? Now I heard you said something about weapons. Okay. Each knight wields a weapon. Wield. So selected by user, is that something that that you do, or is that something that happens in the final game?
Sounds like it's something that they want you to do because they want to test that chance to hit.
Right. So, so you said they want to test that chance to hit. So where do they get that chance to hit from? I mean, it isn't a random number that's generated.
It's a percent. They have a percent chance.
And who decides on the percent chance?
They gave you two, but I think it sounded like it's ultimately up to you to decide what works well and what doesn't.
All right. So how about then, for the sake of the test program, the user will, who will be the game designers, so I can say, let me make that plural since there are two of them. Right? So the designers want to know, well, how well balanced is a weapon if it's got a 99% chance of hitting? And so they type in, they don't have touch typing, they do it this way. They put in the 99, and even though the 9, it's only one key, they actually use 2 fingers to get 99 in there. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm hung up on the typing part, but it just kind of tickled my brain the right way. So yeah, so they're gonna, each time you run the game, they want to type in the values and see how those work, and then they see, oh, it's a little lopsided, so they run it again and they type in different values and see how that works, right? So that's where it comes. So strictly speaking, selected by the user means selecting values by the user. Maybe it sounds like they come up with a whole bunch of sets of values which seem to work well together, and from that, in the later version of the game, which goes beyond this project, they'll actually provide weapons, finished products that the game player would choose. But at this stage, the game designers are providing all the values to see how well they work together. All right, so when does a joust end? How do you know who wins? Okay, a joust ends when a knight is exhausted or when a knight is knocked off the horse. And I heard stamina, so when is a knight exhausted? Any other thoughts you want to throw out about what this game needs to do, or parts of the game that I didn't really describe at this point? Print statements. Tell me a little bit about the print statements.
They basically want you to print out what happens. So they have an example that says, sir, knight is not exhausted, and then they have what his current stamina is.
Okay, and what is the frequency that they want to print that out? All right. After each round, information about each knight and each knight's weapon is displayed to the screen. Okay. Anything else? Little tidbits that you gleaned in the materials that I haven't necessarily typed in. All right. So I've got a question for you. Let me I'm not sure about the iClicker tool, but I believe that you may answer more than once. So let me do this. Do a poll, change that to short answer. And if you recall from dealing with the web counter, a couple terms that I focused on were abstractions and encapsulations. So an abstraction is defining something in terms of how you use it. So what we did with the web counter, you hit, reset, set, get. Those are the things that you did with the web counter. That was the abstraction that we described. And we got 14 answers there. Let me go ahead and start displaying some of those. 15. All right, so a couple that appear repeatedly are knight and weapon. So let me throw those down. Let me throw some of these others down. Stats. So joust. Lance. Stamina. Wins and losses. Get hit. Okay. Let me put down 2. I assume that means 2 weapons. That's what I want, this one. All right, I'll go ahead and stop this for now. I think Knight and Weapon, I think, is pretty reasonable. That stands out prominently as something that would be an abstraction, and you could imagine, just as you have this web counter sitting around in an application that you're using, you could imagine having a knight and a weapon that you're using in this application. And what I'm going to ask you next, actually before I get to that, let's focus on some of these others here. I particularly want to focus on this right here. So I'll actually get to that by going back to, I think it was a lab. What was it, a lab? The stoplight, you had to make a decision. The light was either red or green. You could either go straight, left, or right. Wasn't that a lab? All right. And the way that you would do that, I'm going off of memory. I could be wrong. You'd ask for the direction, you'd ask for the color of the light, and then you would say if direction equals, I don't know, right, and light color equals red. Were those strings or characters? Maybe they're strings. Let me make them strings. Then you would say something like cout, stop, then turn. I don't remember exactly. Doesn't matter. So that was the flavor of the solution to that problem, and something that is very normal to do. If you did this, you're in good company. Many people always do this, is rather than lines 39 and 40, you'd start out with string right, string left, string straight, string red, string green. So what is the mistake in doing lines 47 through 51 instead of lines 39 and 40? 39 and 40 is the correct way. 47 through 51 is the incorrect way. Can someone articulate why that's incorrect? Let me give you another, before you answer, let me give you another example. I want you to write an application that takes a person's name, and then let's say it's the baby celebration application, and you enter the baby's name and it prints out, let me see if I've even got a version of it here. Ooh, that's too large. Width, banner-W30. All right, so it's, you can see that it's vertical. See there? The J, the O, the E, the Y. All right, so you got to write that application, right? It's the birthday baby name celebration program. You type in the newborn's name, and it flashes it up on the screen in big letters. So here you go. You're going to write it. All right, int main. Okay, first I need variables to hold the names. So I'm going to need a string in case they answer Joey. I'm going to need a string in case they answer Martha. I need a string in case they answer Todd. And of course there are those weird ones where they name their kid with only one D. And then I need a string, right? When do I stop? Now do you see the problem with this? These that have been chosen for the names of the variables are values that go into variables. They aren't the variables themselves. So the baby name celebration application should just be string baby name, and now you can get any name typed in there. So that's the problem with that there. Now the reason I went into all this is because of this. This is wrong for the exact same reason. And so now can you articulate for me why 36 is wrong and 25 is correct? Yes?
Because just making one is suffices that we have to make two classes. We just make one night class, you can just make two nights off of that.
That's exactly right. One night, once you have the night class, you can make as many nights as you want. A good analogy for a class is a blueprint. All I need is one blueprint of a house, and I can create as many houses as I want from that blueprint. I do not need a separate blueprint for every single house, glossing over the fact that there are different models of houses. Now, even if you go with that, so there's a counter argument there, which is, well, Todd, how can only one blueprint suffice? Because the walls of the kitchen in this house are green, and the walls in the kitchen of this house are blue. I need two different classes for that. And the answer is no. You need one house class, and there's an attribute called color of kitchen, and that'll contain either blue or red, right? So that's how that argument goes. All right. I would say the same argument here, right? This isn't a class. This would be describing what one weapon might be. Joust, I'm going to finesse that and not answer stat. Some of these we'll leave and we'll answer in a roundabout way. So let me table that. Come back here to our knight and weapon. I think those are our primary candidates at this point. Oops, okay, another question for you. Certainly the language will let you make as many attributes as you wanted, but I want the attributes that are relevant to this jousting game based on the needs of the game designers. That's the key. You're trying to solve a problem for the game designers. If it isn't relevant to them, don't add it, or put a question mark by it to have it a debating point. All right, just a few more moments. We're up to 15. We can go ahead and start looking at that. Up to 17. They're coming in fast and furious now. Okay. The knight. stamina, horse, int. I see horse, on horse, on horse. Skill name. Weapon. That's all right. I think we've got enough to kind of play with here. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Name. Someone put a question mark by this one, and I think there's actually good cause to talk about this, because the name of the knight really is not going to help the game designers determine whether or not they have balanced attributes. That said, they did talk about historical names and so forth. And I would say for this, we have to pull out a roll a little bit, and I have to say for the sake of having a program that's far more engaging, we're going to give our knights names. Okay? And I concede that it's not the most useful thing for the game designers to have at this point. That's an excellent question. Would it be the name of the class or an attribute? Since you can create two knights from a single class, then both knights would have the same name if we just called it class Bob. So we'll leave it as the name of the class will be knight, and then the name will be an attribute of knight, which would just be a string. So of questionable value, but we're going to stick it in there. Next is stamina. I think that's apropos. It's definitely what the designers talked about. We've had a lot of variants here, so this is, yeah, we'll talk about this more definitely tomorrow. We'll talk about this more tomorrow, but I think this is reasonable as well. Some indication as to whether or not the knight is currently on their horse, because what if they're not on their horse? Game over. Skill. This one I don't know about. I don't think it's a little vague. I can't quite get my head around that one. This one may have been typed in inadvertently. Certainly the stamina would be an integer. Maybe what we'll do is meld those together like that. A little sneak preview of things to come. Weapon. This is an excellent question. Is it so we're thinking that weapon will actually be its own class. Is it possible to have one class be an attribute of another class? It is. So I'll say this is fine. This is formally called composition. Informally, it is referred to as has a relationship. And the irony here is if I search for the words has a, they aren't found. That wasn't so ironic. Has. I know I had something here. Oh, I must have removed it. I had actually typed it in when we were talking. Well, either that or I'm just hallucinating. All right. I thought that up there somewhere someone had said something about a knight has a weapon, and I thought I'd type that in, but maybe not. So that's why that's informally referred to that way. Final, we do have 2 more minutes, so in that I'm going to ask this question, except I want it to be for weapon. All right. Start looking at, whoops, let me start looking at that. Sorry, I accidentally turned it off. Let's see. Let's come back here. We have hit, type of weapon, stamina depletion, hit chance. We've got various versions of this. Stamina use, stamina to wield. I think those are all good. All right, so I think that we have variants on what we have here. Let me close that for the moment. Let's look at this. So yes, I think a weapon has some sort of hit chance. Stamina depletion, which is the stamina required to use the weapon and the type of weapon, which would be like lance, sword, or whatever. Now, we're out of time. We have to think about next time. This is something to think about in your head. We had two folks up here where we're kind of doing the role play on how web counters work. Okay, we're not going to have 2, we're not going to have 3, we're going to have 5 people up here on Wednesday to do the role play on how knights and weapons interact with each other. So if you're kind of a closet thespian and this is going to be your big chance on Wednesday, so go ahead and... What's that? If you bring your weapons, I may allow you to use them.